in ancient times for the Israelites. I think many of us know you weren't allowed to touch a dead body. You can't even get close to anything that has touched a dead body at all, or else you would be unclean. And so what they would do when they would get tombs of people, they would make them whitewashed, meaning they would paint them to a point where when people would see that color, they would know that inside are dead bones. And so it was like saying, stay away, these are dead bones, don't touch it. And so I tell you that to paint the picture what Jesus actually says. He calls the Pharisees and Sadducees whitewashed tombs. Doesn't that hit harder? So Jesus is saying you are whitewashed tombs, meaning on the outside it may look pretty, but inside you are dead, like dead men's bones. Then this is what he adds though. He says, but you pretend as if you are alive. Ooh, friends, doesn't that hit harder? This is what I said yesterday. Today is a continuation of yesterday. This is very, very important. The temptation for us is that when we see the Pharisees and Sadducees, we think they are the enemies. They never knew. They're so mistaken. How could they do that? And we don't pay attention to that we can be exactly like them. Jesus is very adamant because Jesus understands that they are supposed to be the closest to God. Notice how I say supposed to be. Friends, they have fought for the Jewish faith for centuries. And I said this yesterday, it's very important for us to understand, because when I used to read the Pharisees and Sadducees, I would think, oh, look at them. They have no idea what they're doing. Never thought about looking at the mirror and looking at my own self. When Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and Sadducees, the spiritual realm is we have to look at us too. Not that look at them, look how wonderful we are. Look how awful they are, look how good we are. It doesn't work that way. We can't live like that. That's how the devil enters into our lives. He tempts us for pride and arrogance. And then Jesus goes on and he says, look, you give memorials to the prophets, meaning you praise the prophets, you adore them, you love them. But that's easy. But the minute that there's a prophet in front of you, you kill them. You are the same as the ancestors who have said and who have hated the prophets. Why is that important? Because Jesus is standing right in front of them and they refused to see. Before this, it's Matthew 23:3. It's the very start of these woes. He literally says, I want you to listen to what they say, meaning I want you to follow their words, but I don't want you to follow their example. Do you get that? Jesus is not saying don't listen to them at all. He says listen to them because they represent me. But don't follow their example because they are not acting, they're not practicing what they're preaching. My dear friends, every single day we have to pay attention to our lives. And that word hypocrisy gets thrown around. That's why I don't really like using it a lot. The modern world has stolen that word. But I want you to pay attention to what that means, hypocrisy. What does that mean? What does that mean to, literally, there are moments in our spiritual life when we, I don't know, I remember I'm prideful too, I'm human. I would have moments when I remember as a seminarian especially, I would go pray. And then I would love when people would see me praying. I loved it so much. I'd be taking my book out and I'd be they'd be there watching and I'd be ooh, they think I'm awesome. Awful. But all of us fall into that temptation where we're praying, we're ooh, I'm so glad they saw that I pray. Friends, it doesn't matter if people see you. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters besides you and the Lord. So that little example of hypocrisy is so prevalent in every single person. The biggest temptation hits people who come to daily mass. Why? Because you are already going all the time. You are probably praying a rosary every day. You are going to confession, I am sure. You are people who love the Lord, but this is how the devil comes and he starts putting all these things in our minds and our hearts. We have to be careful. So how do we be careful? Pay attention. Don't ever think that these Pharisees can't be you. But look in the mirror and say, okay, God, this is where I am. I'm struggling with this. Here, this is who I am. Thank you for your mercy. It is surrendering every single day, understanding that we are all sinners, my dear friends. And then with that freedom, we can move forward and trust that God's got us.